What's the crack, guys? Welcome back to my channel. Kazzy here. I hope you're all doing well. In this video today I'm going to be sharing with you all of the books that I read in March. March was actually a pretty amazing reading month for me. I managed to get through 8 books and none of these were particularly, yep, that's the word. None of these were particularly short. Most of them were about 400 pages. I think 1 or 2 were a bit shorter, but it's still amazing to get through 8 books in just 31 days. I think that's near close to what I did in January, which was 9, but then 3 of those were very short. Okay, I read those in like the space of a couple of hours, but in March, no such thing. These were all quite long. I've got a lot of books to talk about and I have a lot of thoughts in them, so let's just get started. The first book that I read in March was actually a reread for me for the next book coming out at the end of the month, and that was Star Trek Voyager's A Pocket Full of Lies by Kirsten Bayer. Good thing I reread this because I literally forgot about 90% of what happened in this book. I read this book back in 2016 and I did a video on it, and I will have it linked in the cards up here or in the description box down below so you can see what my thoughts were when I initially read this book. As I said, I read this book again because the next book was coming out at the end of March and I wanted to refresh my memory to see if anything linked, and as I said, good thing I did. I went into it thinking, oh yeah, I'll remember it. No, I didn't. I forgot most of it. Even parts with Janeway, and Janeway is my life. I live for every single scene that she is in. Forgot most of it. And it made me realize that a lot of the original characters that were brought into this post-series arc, I don't like. You know, I was just like, okay, that's what you're doing. Whatever. But I basically lived for Janeway and Chakotay because they are a couple in this series. They are a couple post-series. I love it. I think they're so cute. I shipped them so hard when I was watching the series. I know everybody doesn't. I know a couple of my friends don't, and that's okay. We're still friends, right? But I pretty much lived for those scenes. The science of it, because like the Krenim are involved and temporal prime directives are involved and temporal paradoxes are involved, you know, sometimes the scientific rhetoric really gives me a headache. And so because of that, and because of like the arc, and because I was revisiting, I kind of rethought my opinions on it. I can't really remember what my opinions were on it because it was so long ago and this book was put off again and again and again and again. I just decided, right, this is going to be a 3 stars. After that, I picked up Ballet Shoes by Noel Streatfeild, and there are 2 reasons why I picked this book up. One is that Emilia Fox is in the BBC adaptation of Ballet Shoes and she plays Sylvia. The second reason is that this book is mentioned in one of my favourite films of all time, You've Got Mail. I pretty much live for that scene where Meg Ryan's character is going through Fox books and the lady there is looking for the shoe books and she doesn't know who the author is, and Meg Ryan's character does, and she says, Noel Streatfeild wrote ballet shoes and theatre shoes and skating shoes and dancing shoes. As I was reading this, I was wondering if the BBC adaptation followed it pretty closely, and it did. It did for the most part. I adored this. I adored the characters. Sylvia was still my favourite because, of course, the links with Emilia Fox. And even Noel Streatfeild's writing I wasn't expecting, and it was like just such an enjoyable read, and I love the characters, I love the world, and like I could understand all of the theatre jargon because my degree, part of my degree is in drama. I just loved it. It was so cute and I gave this 4 stars. After Ballet Shoes, I listened to the audiobook of The Diviners by Libba Bray, read by January Lavoie. I usually like to use my Audible credits to get audiobooks that I know I can't physically get the books of, or the exact copy of a book that I want. So I decided that in March I was going to use it for The Diviners because I've heard so much about that series on BookTube and I just wanted to read it. It sounded right up my alley. 1920s New York and these people with all these abilities and magic, and it sounded amazing, and so I started listening to it and I was hooked. The way January Lavoie reads, it was just so wonderful. I could listen to her read the phone book. Her voice whenever she was doing the narration parts reminded me of Brenda Strong, and if you don't know who Brenda Strong is, you probably never watched Desperate Housewives because she's the narrator in Desperate Housewives. So I adored that part of it, and then the voices that she does for the characters were just perfect. I love the voice that she did for Evie because it kind of reminded me of Twilight Sparkle from My Little Pony. So if you're wondering how a grown woman knows about My Little Pony, my best friend's little girls are obsessed with it and I kind of want to know what they're talking about. But I absolutely loved this audiobook. I was hooked on it. I couldn't stop listening to it. Whenever I was doing anything, I was listening to it. I could not stop. I needed to know what was happening. It reminded me at times of Nosferatu by Joe Hill, just with some of the things that crossed over, but I still loved it. It was still fantastic. There is one part of it though that I was like, I can't take this seriously, and that's just some of the expressions that Evie has, you know, positively, and like, I know that's the way people spoke back then, but it just is like, did she seriously just say that? I loved the way that Libba Bray wrote. Everything was just so vivid for me. I could imagine everything. There are still times when I'm like walking past places where I was listening this audiobook to, and I just get hit with that part that I could just remember January Lavoie narrating, and it's just fantastic. And of course this was 5 stars. After The Diviners, I picked up Star Trek Discovery Drastic Measures by Dayton Ward. I love this. Absolutely loved this book. This is the first book that I've ever read by Dayton Ward, and he has written quite a few books in the Star Trek canon. He's written ones for, I think, Enterprise, Deep Space Nine, and The Next Generation. But this is the first one that I've read for him with his first foray into Discovery, and oh my god, he nailed it right on the head. The action in this takes place right from the beginning. I thought it was going to segue into it about like a third of the way. Nope, it hit the ground running. I loved that about this. It was amazing. He really got the characters nailed, especially Lorca and Georgiou. This really focuses around Lorca and Georgiou, and if you know what happens to Lorca and Georgiou in Star Trek Discovery, then you will know why this is so interesting to me. I loved it so much. Even the original characters that he created were amazing. There were a lot of kick-ass and amazingly strong female characters in this. Lorca didn't delegate anything to just a bloke, because, you know, it was bloke. His like first officer, his like second in command, was a woman, and she was just amazing. I couldn't get over how strong all of these women were in this book, and Dayton Ward writes amazing action sequences. I could not put this book down when I was reading it. It was just so good. The way that he writes was just perfect. I loved it. There wasn't an abundance of scientific rhetoric. There was the right balance between science, action, and inaction, and just setting up everything. I loved it. He really got to the nitty-gritty of characters that we really don't necessarily know a lot about, because there's only been one season of Discovery, and then who knows when he actually started writing this, whether the series was out yet or not. It just is amazing, and I can't even recommend this book enough for Star Trek fans. They don't necessarily have to be fans of Discovery, because if they read this book, they will like Discovery. I actually like the books more than the series. I have quite differing opinions on this series, but I loved this book so much, and I really want to read more works by Dayton Ward if this is anything to go by. After that, I read The Tattooist of Auschwitz by Heather Morris. This is the powerful true story of Leil Sokolov. I probably butchered that name beyond recognition. And this is the story of the Tattooist of Auschwitz. Leil, I'm just going to call him Leil. He was brought to Auschwitz-Birkenau as part of a, right, we'll take one member of your family, and the rest and your family is going to be safe. And so Leil volunteers to protect his family. Somehow he ends up being the tattooist of everybody that's processed through Auschwitz and Birkenau, and he starts tattooing everybody with these like most rudimentary pieces of equipment. Then one day he meets Gita, and he kind of just falls in love with her on sight. He tries to protect her, and so that the Nazis don't harm her in any way, so that they don't treat her in the way that he's seen people be treated, and it just is the story of how they survived Auschwitz together. I absolutely love this. I pretty much went through this in the space of about 24 hours. I could not put this down. It was just so powerful and so visceral that you just couldn't deny this. And there are a lot of books about a lot of stories that come out of concentration camps. This is the first time that I've ever read a book that's really within somebody that's kind of working for the Nazis, but they're not working for the Nazis. This book was different in that it was what I was expecting, but it wasn't what I was expecting. At times I wanted it to be a bit more visceral, and I really wanted it to like punch me in the chest with how brutal all of this was. Like, there are times in this book I'm like, you got away with that. How did you get away with that? And I'm like thinking, this kind of like is a little unbelievable in that I don't believe that it actually happened. Like, I'm like wondering, did Morris write this to kind of add this element to it, or was this really what happened, you know? But at the same time, this is a true story. Like, that's just the way that I thought whenever I was reading it. There's like actually quite a bit of like sex in this, and I'm like, you just had sex in a concentration camp. How did you just get away with that? That's probably because, you know, you've never heard of people actually doing that, you know, or having the privacy to do that. It was such a good read. I really do recommend it, and a lot of people that I know are actually wanting to borrow this off me, so yeah, it was such a good book, and I give this 4 stars. After that, I picked up the Where'd that go? After that, I picked up The Stolen Generation by my good friend N.A. Lebrun, and this was not for me. I'm sorry to say it was not for me. I actually give this 2.5 stars, and I really went into detail why I gave it that, because the story of The Stolen Generation was very much intriguing for me. Because between the years of 1972 and 1993, thousands of children had their souls separated from their bodies and attached to lab-made children. So the souls of children that were aborted through forced abortions were harvested and then implanted into IVF test tube babies, basically. Now they're kind of fighting back and reclaiming their identities and reclaiming their soul mothers. It sounded like such a unique story for me, and like, you know, I love my fantasies and I love my dystopians, but this just did not gel for me. I got an arc of it, and there were parts of it where I was just like, there were just like some plot holes that I didn't really gel with. Even the setting of it didn't really gel with me, because like dystopians, I always think of them as in the future, whereas this is set more in now times, you know, set around like the early millennium, and that just didn't gel for me, because like the politics of the day were too advanced for something like this, and the technology of the day was too advanced for me. There were just little inconsistencies that really took the enjoyment out for me. I didn't particularly gel well with a number of the characters, and there were just things that it just was not for me. And I really do think that if you like your dystopians that are more set in the present day, or you like your LGBTQ plus characters, then this is for you. I had no problem with the LGBTQ plus characters. That's not why the characters did not gel for me. It was just their actions and the way that they acted that I had a problem with. So that's why I give it a 2.5 out of 5. If you watched my book depository haul, you will know that there was a couple of books in there that I got purely for the editions, and I was ridiculously looking forward to reading those. And so as soon as I managed to find a window to read one of those, I did. And I started with Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo, which is the first book in the Six of Crows duology. Leigh Bardugo is my fucking queen. She can do no wrong. Every single book that I've picked up from her, don't know why I said it like that. Every single book that I've picked up by Leigh Bardugo, I have absolutely adored. The Grisha trilogy is right behind me. The Language of Thorns book, Wonder Woman Warbringer, everything has been amazing. So it stands to reason that Six of Crows, one of the most talked about books on BookTube, was going to be fucking awesome. And it was. From the first line, I was hooked. I started this at about like 10 o'clock at night, and like 1 AM I was like, I don't want to put this down. I was already hooked. I love these characters so much. It was so great, like visiting another part of the Grisha universe, a different part of the country that this is set in, and a different cast of characters that are amazing. And when everybody ever talked about this as a heist, I always thought it was like a bank heist, but no, they're actually trying to get somebody out of like the most guarded prison in this entire universe. I was like, okay, alright, I like this. I really do like the sound of this. And it was amazing. I sat up to about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning every night to keep on reading. I actually finished this at about 3 o'clock in the morning because I could not put it down. I was actually reading in the dark with this ring light that is attached to my camera as my lamp, because I didn't want to have a full-on lamp on and have people know, oh, she's up. If you've never read Leigh Bardugo, do yourselves the biggest favor in life and read Leigh Bardugo. She has this way with words that I am just putty for. All of her characters are the most unique, brave, sassy, witty, sarcastic, intelligent, just everything good about characters are in this book. I could not put it down. I did not want to put it down. Yes, this was just so amazing. I love the characters. Kaz, he owns my heart, not because his name is half of mine, but he's just the best, and I love them all, and I'm gonna be sad when I finish Crooked Kingdom, I really am. But yes, Leigh Bardugo is my queen, and of course this was 5 freaking stars. And the last book that I read in March was Star Trek Voyager Architects of Infinity by Kirsten Beyer, which was the next book in the series. I hated this. Absolutely hated this book. Even the parts with GNY in it were woeful. I was like, what am I reading? This is boring as sin. And yes, I know I've like showed my iPad like quite a few times today, but a lot of these were like ebooks, and you know, what, I can't do anything about that. There was so much scientific rhetoric. I've said that so many times today. But you can near make up a drinking game for me like saying scientific rhetoric in this video, but there was so much of it. I was actually getting a headache. I don't get headaches a lot when I'm reading books. This one gave me about 5 of them. Anytime I picked it up, even if I had to just look at the cover and just to figure out as it was opening where it went to where I left off, I was like, headache. It was crap. It was boring. I couldn't get over how boring this was, and I felt like it was plagiarizing quite a lot of the Next Generation. There were parts of it I was like, that's kind of been a Next Generation. I think there was part of like, I was like thinking, okay, this is just from out of Skin of Evil, or this is right out of the Crystalline Entity kind of storyline, and I was not impressed one bit. So many of the characters were out of character. I didn't even recognize them. Harry, he regressed so much to being a feckin' wimp. B'Elanna, I didn't even recognize her in this book at all. Janeway, I didn't even recognize her. She's having a freaking panic attack over the idea of Chakotay proposing. Bitch only just came back to life. He's not about to start proposing. Like, what? And the storyline with Nancy Conlon, oh my Jesus, I want her to just fucking die already. Sorry for the cursing, but I hate her. Some of these characters were just wimps, and some of these original characters are disgraces to the Starfleet uniform. They were acting like such children. They were so jealous of the way that the original Voyager crew bonded and got on together. They were like, oh, I kind of wish I was one of them. And there was one storyline with Icheb that, like, I was just, what? He kind of falls to this lieutenant, and the lieutenant then goes to his senior officer and is like, can Icheb be on my team? I'm like, I'm sorry, are you actually freaking serious? You're going to the senior officer in charge, and you're asking him if the guy that you're kind of crushing on can be on your team when he's got like no real rights to be on your team? Childish. I'm like, am I reading about 13-year-old girls, or am I reading about Starfleet officers that are back in the Delta Quadrant, one of the most inhospitable places in our galaxy, and it's starting to be like fucking high school? No, that was not on. I was bored to tears with this. I literally skipped, I don't know, about 150 pages just looking for buzzwords that I thought might interest me. Nope, it was shit. It was shit for Star Trek Voyager. It was shit for Kirsten Beyer. I couldn't believe what I was reading. I'm like thinking, has she gotten too much into the Star Trek Discovery brain or what? I do not know, because I read A Pocket Full of Lies, as you already know, 3 weeks before this one. And after this, I'm like, I do not even recognize this bloody author anymore. It was woeful. I cannot get over it. I actually want Dayton Ward to continue on from Kirsten Beyer for Star Trek Voyager, because I think he would do a much better job with these characters, with Janeway, with the original characters that have been created for this, and I just think he'd do a better job. And even that cliffhanger at the end, I don't care. I really do not care. And that is sad to say because, you know, Star Trek Voyager is my life. It is my favorite show of life. Just for this piece of crap to be out there as a storyline for these characters, it breaks my heart and it makes me very, very angry. Like, I don't know whether it was because I was annoyed that there wasn't so much Janeway in this one, or there was too much of the original characters, but it just like felt like it was just regurgitation of other storylines, even storylines that are in the video games I recognized in this. I was like, not impressed one bit, so I give it 1 star. If I had my way, it would have been like a 0.1 or 0.0001. Ugh, just crap. So that rant aside, those are all of the books that I read in March. There are 8 of them, even probably, but in the thumbnail it probably looks like I only read 3, but that was because so many of them were on my phone and my iPad. So sorry if that was a little misleading. Let me know what books you read in March. Have you read any of these books? Do you want to read any of these books? Do you want to read any of the Star Trek Voyager ones? Because let me tell you, I really cannot speak today. But other than that, I hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe if you're new to my channel, and I will see you in my next video.